Northcote once had a beach and Pahutakawa-covered cliffs along its eastern coastline, much like other parts of the shore. In 1959, Sulphur Beach was obliterated under acres of tarmac, giant earth ramparts and massive pylons carrying the northern motorway and harbour bridge approaches. The once beautiful reserve on Stokes Point now looks like this. It has been easy for the thousands of shore dwellers thundering north at speed to turn a blind eye to Northcote's biggest eyesore. For Northcote residents, however, the total loss of Sulphur Beach and a huge stretch of coastline has been an enormous price to pay. We certainly have done our bit for the shore. The fortunate citizens of Devonport, East Coast Bays, Takapuna, and Milford all have expansive sandy beaches nearby for walking, sunbathing, picnicking and games. But note that these beaches are not factored into the Council's per capita reserve calculations. Northcote and Birkenhead Point, on the other hand, have only two tiny precious pockets of beach in Little Shoal Bay. Both almost disappear at high tide. So what we lack in the way of a large sandy beach, we need to make up for by having grassy open space adjoining a beach, so that we too can enjoy seaside leisure activities. This is not the planning of envy, but of equity, not of greed, but of need. Little Shoal Bay is the only beach with an adjacent level park area between Devonport and Cowrie Point. The most important usable grassy area in Little Shoal Bay is the well-used but cramped play area next to the beach. It is often crowded with people with young children, wanting to supervise them in the play area, on the beach, and in the water. Beach users are limited to this paltry pocket of the bay by an aging motel, an aging scout den, an ugly seawall, a boat haul-out area and road, and a boat ramp and car parking area. Could the same be said about Takapuna, Cheltenham, and the East Coast Bay's beaches? Would people there tolerate such cramped conditions and ugly structures? Of course not. We support their right to enjoy 100% usage of their sandy beaches and adjacent park areas. To make up for Little Shoal Bay's current shortcomings, local residents have always expected that the adjacent motel site would eventually become public open space. Also, the camping ground site would eventually allow Dudding Park to become a multi-purpose full-sized playing field. The short-sighted fire sale of these two sites by the then Council in 1993, together with a residential zoning, has exposed key areas of the bay to development that is demonstrably against the wishes of the wider community. Hundreds of people from Northcote and Birkenhead Point have made their feelings clear on many occasions. The other grassed areas of Little Shoal Bay are desolate islands surrounded by car parks, boat yard, boat ramp, haul-out road, and concrete wall. Most importantly, they do not adjoin the beach. No one likes to swim off the slippery seawall, where the seabed is also rather muddy, so few people sit on the grassy area next to the dusty road along the seawall. It is in the beach area of Little Shoal Bay that more space for beach-related leisure is required. The bush and wetland area of Little Shoal Bay, primarily a wildlife and native bush habitat, is used by Council to calculate the per capita reserve ratio in the area. But though we love it, we can't crowd into it, lounge about on it, or swim in it. Residents cannot make it clearer that they are desperate to make their only piece of sandy beach more open and accessible, and ultimately improve the quantity and quality of public open space in the bay. This recent petition supporting Council repurchase of the motel and camping ground sites has over 1,400 signatures on it. The present layout and development of Little Shoal Bay is a chaotic, historical planning nightmare. The bay has often been used as a dumping ground for uses which have despoiled the bay to a greater or lesser extent: reclamation, earth spoil and rubbish, the gasworks, the seawall, the through road, culverting which destroyed the salt marshes, the boatyard and haul-out ramps, the motel and camping ground. To add to this unsavoury mix, we now have the prospect of 9-metre-high housing, looking directly down onto the tiny play area and blocking views in all directions, as well as presenting a solid wall to the sports field. These large areas of intrusive development will limit public enjoyment and access, both visually and physically, and oppress the already inadequate play and beach areas and the sports field. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, there are serious environmental problems in Little Shoal Bay. Unfortunately, because they illustrate the cavalier attitude of human beings towards the natural environment. Fortunately, because we believe they will prevent further built development of the bay. Flooding is already a regular occurrence. The playing field and part of the camping ground are registered by council as a floodplain. The very high levels of the 1985 floods were recorded almost a metre up from the ground on the bowling club wall. The camping ground next door was also partially awash. Kids canoed on the playing fields during these floods. Flooding can only become worse with rising sea levels. Already at high tide, the sea laps over the sea wall onto the land. Should council risk being sued for allowing residential development on land which will be the first to be affected by sea level rise? Then there is the problem of hazardous wastes emanating from the old gas company operations in the bay. Ironically, this gaseous black cloud has a silver lining, as it should mean that the motel, camping ground and gasometer sites will never be suitable for residential development. Again, should council risk being sued for allowing residential development on land from which pollutants may emerge in the future, as happened in Napier City, where the council is facing liability? Traffic is another sensitive environmental issue in the bay. Public enjoyment of the reserve is diminished considerably by increasing volumes of traffic which pound through relentlessly every day. To add many permanent houses and residents' cars into this melange would have an adverse effect on the tranquility and natural environment of the reserve. Whether the land is zoned residential 4A for many smaller units or 2B for fewer larger units is unimportant. The permitted site coverage will still be 35%. There will be the same amount of hard, walled surfaces, paving and roofing, and to the same probable height of 9 metres. Any housing on this land is unacceptable to the local community. With vision, patience and foresight, the locals would happily be prepared to wait for Little Shoal Bay to look like this. The important thing is to halt potential housing development on the motel and camping ground sites now, because once they roll in the bulldozers, the already vulnerable charm of Little Shoal Bay will be lost forever. North Shore City Council has taken a lot out of our area to fund projects for the good of the wider shore. Northcote was seen as asset-rich at the time of amalgamation. In fact, Northcote was only rich in terms of its commercial land assets, the camping ground and motel sites and the industrial estate in Kawana Street, which have all been sold, and the shopping centre, which is likely to be sold. But Northcote is in fact asset poor in terms of facilities on reserve land. Our public toilets, changing sheds, seating, and children's play equipment are just not in the same league as those in East Coast Bays, Takapuna, and Devonport. Potentially, Little Shoal Bay is perfect for passive recreation. Unlike nearby Hinimoa Park, it is very safe and inviting. It has a beach, it is level, it is open, it gets all available sun, and it is conveniently positioned for the surrounding residential areas. It has gorgeous views of the harbour and city. Little Shoal Bay is a gem. It is unique on the shore, and perhaps in the wider metropolitan area, because it combines foreshore, beach, safe swimming and boating, passive recreation, sports field, wetlands and native bush. Out of the hash created by the historical planning nightmare, a splendid vision for the bay can be fashioned, but only if the future nightmare of housing development does not take place. On the principles of shore-wide equity, it would be most unfair to ruin the peace and tranquility of Little Shoal Bay with large, visually intrusive housing developments. We do not want or need this kind of development here. Like others, we want something better for our neighbourhood and for our children. So what do we want? We want equity. And when do we want it? Now is the time. The longer we argue about this, the more expensive it will be to rectify, as population and housing densities rapidly increase and poisonous gases and rising sea levels have their way. We have already done our share for the wider shore. We lost Sulphur Beach to give the shore the bridge and the motorway. The motel, camping ground and industrial estate have been sold, and the shopping centre is next. Our family silver is gone, and we have nothing to show for it. Enough is enough. We need all of Little Shoal Bay, including the motel and camping ground sites, zoned for recreation or designated reserve. The whole of North Shore City will benefit from the community's vision for our precious, unique, seaside Little Shoal Bay. We need the Council to embrace and lead this vision.